Good morning, dolls, and welcome to Little Gretchen's workshop. So today we're going to make what looks like chaos and turn it into these adorable little boxes. Well, they will be adorable when we're done. In this series, we've talked about bags, boxes, and luggage, and we've made bags and we've made luggage. So today we're going to make the boxes. All the scraps and little pieces that you've cut off and the remnants from your jumbo craft sticks and your tiny coffee stir sticks. Now, dolls, I save all of mine in a bag, so a lot of them are already pre-cut. So what I do is lay all my pieces out and then begin to separate and assemble them based on their size and shape. Now, I use the birchwood coffee stir sticks as well, but I really like the really teeny ones because they really make things look like they're in scale. Now, in the case of this box, I actually use some of that wood strip that I used on some of the suitcases. Now, if you haven't seen my suitcase videos, they fell a little earlier in the series. So I will leave a link in the description below. But I'm making a lot of boxes in various shapes and sizes, but I'm not really sure what I'm going to use them for. Well, I actually do know a couple things I'm going to make, but there are various reasons why you may need boxes in a dollhouse or a miniature setting. So when you make a variety of boxes all at one time, you kind of have them already pre-made and have them ready depending on what you might need. I was planning on having Sadi give Marguerite a jewelry box or a music box, and that's what I'm saving that one for. I figured somebody might have a box of cigars, although there's no smoking in the rooming house. So some could be shoe boxes or trinket boxes or even a bread box, a cash box, a box of nails, all kinds of things. And in reality, dolls, boxes are actually the same shape that you would use to make drawers for your furniture. So I'm just trying to simplify the concept, just to break down things into smaller pieces, so when you do other projects, you already have the basics. Now again, dolls, I'm working with random scraps that were left over from other projects, so I do have to trim and size the pieces that I'm making to be the lids for the little boxes I've created. So here you see me playing around. I've got a base piece and I'm using another piece I found, just sanding it a little bit to make sure it fits the piece I'm using for the base of my box. And after I got both sides sanded and fitted properly, I glued them to the side of the box. So I generally do the longest sides first and then cut and size the ends of the box. The great part is the Gorilla Wood glue catches and sets up really quick, so you see how that other side is standing alone. Now that I have both pieces on the sides up, I'm going to give that a moment to dry and get firm before I try to size the end pieces. Now, when you're doing the sides of your boxes, if you use wood strips or coffee stir sticks or even popsicle sticks, it works really well because the height is already determined. All you're worrying about is how long it needs to be to fit between the two walls that have already been set up. So dolls, try to cut your pieces so that it'll fit in nice and smooth and neatly. To me, it's really great when the piece fits in kind of snug, where there's a little tension between the two sides and the piece. It makes the little structure feel very sturdy. If any glue oozes, wipe it off. And try to use the smallest amount of glue as possible. Now, some of these boxes I'll be painting, so I'm not worried about the glue getting on the outside. But if you're staining your pieces, it'll probably be a best practice to stain them before you make the boxes. But these were all scraps, dolls. I only had a couple pieces that had stain on them already. Now, in addition to the boxes that I'm making right now, I made several prior to starting this video because this idea has been in my head a while. Now, I also want to point out that some of these random pieces I have left over were actually shingles from when I made the parquet floors. I'll put a link in the description for that. But they're perfect size for little boxes, so I did use them as the base of some of these boxes. The material is very, very thin, but the shape is perfect, and when you put them in the structure of a box, it works out great. So dolls, if you have any random leftover shingles from any of your roofing projects, Don't throw them away. Keep them. If you got one or two, you can use them to make boxes. Now you see there, dolls, I had a few scraps and remnants even left over from when I did the bead board in the rooming house. So I do have a jumbo craft stick that was stained from the wide plank floors in the rooming house as well. So I'll use that as a lid. Now, dolls, I probably seem like I'm all over the place, but when I do projects like this, I don't really have a plan. I just allow my eyes to just kaleidoscope the materials I have and just see what I can come up with. I guess that comes from all those years as a child having to work with scraps and trash. You just have to learn to work with what you have and allow your imagination to lead you. And this would be one of those type of projects. Now, Dal, sometime you'll find a piece that's almost the right size, but it's not broad enough or it's too short. You can add a border with the coffee stir stick to extend the width. So let's zero in on this little box that I want Sadi to give to Marguerite. I did quite a bit of sanding on this to make it super, super smooth. Now, depending on the type of box you're making, a lot of sanding may not be necessary, but because I want this to be something considered beautiful and precious, I'm probably going to put a little bit more work in on this one than some of the other boxes. Since this is a gift that Sadi is making to give to Marguerite, I imagine how hard he would have worked on it to make it nice to be a presentable gift for her. So I taped it together so that it would be flush on the back where I'm going to add my hinges. Now, dolls, I've used this technique several times with my luggage in this series, and the concept is the same, except I'm only using one hinge, and I'm going to put it in the center rather than two on each end. Now, dolls, be very gentle. Make sure you don't get the glue on the seam of your box, and don't get it into the actual hinge part because it'll be locked forever. Now you do see I put my blue tape on the sides to keep everything flush, and I tapped it down, and I actually am taking this opportunity to go ahead and start placing my studs into the holes as well because the glue is still wet. Now, I generally like to put my hinges on before I do any staining or painting because sometimes the stain and the paint will inhibit the glue from adhering properly. So to me, I get better adhesion when I'm gluing it to the raw wood rather than something that's freshly stained because natural wood stain has oils in it. It's also best to avoid things that have a really glossy finish when you're trying to adhere your hinges. Now, dolls, after my hinges were dry, I decided to add a little lace to my box. This concept was inspired by Queen City Minis. She added lace to a table leg to make it look as though it was carved. I thought that would be cute on my little music box. And I'm just checking the size of my music box on a dresser just to see how it will look and just to make sure I stayed in scale. I think it turned out kind of cute. So, dolls, I decided to paint it like a robin's egg blue color, but I didn't actually have that color, so I had to do some color mixing. I used a turquoise or teal color with some navy blue, some black, some white. Again, dolls, this is another pre-K moment. And I just mixed all the colors together until I got a color that resembled what I was looking for. And sometimes, dolls, this is what you have to do. You don't necessarily always have to buy a color. Sometimes you need to just do a custom color to get the look that you want. Mix small amounts at a time until you got your ratios together. And if it's a color you really like, write down what you did the first time. So if you ever need to do it again, you'll have the formula. Now, dolls, I really took my time painting around the lace because I didn't decide till later in the project that I was going to actually paint the lace blue as well. But again, anytime you're painting tiny projects like this and you haven't fully decided how you're going to decorate, just do one part at a time while you're thinking, or make your decision before you start, which is generally not what I do when I do tiny projects like this. I just gather all my materials and allow my imagination to just be free. Right here, a new idea was brewing, but I had to let it dry. So while that's drying, I'm going to go on and show you how I make my baskets. Now, I don't do any weaving or anything like that, dolls. I just use some of my good old trusted burlap and covered one of the little boxes just like I would have done with the suitcases. When the corners were dry, I just trimmed them off. And again, I used the same concept that I used with the suitcases. I will leave a link in the description below. But then I used the little wire part that was on the ribbon style burlap, and I bent it into the shape of a handle. I actually glued 2 layers together so it would be a little bit heavier. And then I clamped them inside the basket and allowed them to dry. Now I did use my Beacon's glue, and you can see how nice the edges are after I trim the corners. They're nice and neat and snug. You don't see the box at all. And that raw edge that you see at the top, that can be covered a number of ways. You could actually put fabric around it. You could trim it with lace. But what I did, I trimmed off the little wire edge to the ribbon burlap, and I just wrapped it around the perimeter of the basket and used that as a finishing piece. Now, a number of ways, dolls, you could have used ribbon, or you could use some other type of rope or cording. But again, use what you have. And if you don't take the time to clamp around the edge or the border of the basket, definitely squeeze it with your fingers to make sure you get a nice tight seal with your border. And after you're satisfied with it, just allow it to dry. I think that turned out cute. It would be really nice with some vegetables in it, or some fruit, or some grapes hanging out of that. And make sure if you have any little stray pieces, you trim those off. But I think that turned out really, really cute. So dolls, at this point, I came to the conclusion I was going to paint my lace the same color as the box. So I more or less tried to just saturate the lace with the same color that I mixed, the little robin's egg blue color. And it really looked pretty even just like that with the blue. But you know, dolls, when I start to embellish things and decorate things, it gets really hard to stop. So I'm going to let that dry. So dolls, I'm just going to show you I added a little pin handle to another small little trinket box, but it's up to you how you embellish your boxes. So now that my lace is dry, I went ahead and used the rub and buff to just add it to the high points of the lace to really bring out the design, and just dusted it across the top to just give it a little sparkle, a little shine, just to give the impression of a gilded carving. I thought it turned out kind of pretty. I think it's going to be a lovely gift for Sadie to give Marguerite at the beginning of their courtship. Now, dolls, I didn't go into the details of what I did on all of the boxes because your needs might be different. I added handles and buckles and straps and things just like I did to the suitcases. So I would advise that you make all your basic boxes and then just take the time to embellish and decorate all the boxes either as needed or all at once. But most of all, just have fun. Now, dolls, at this point, you know I couldn't resist adding a few of those nail studs to this little jewelry box. This was really a fun project. I hope you try it. Now, dolls, if you've enjoyed this video today, definitely let me know in the comments. Also, like, subscribe, and share this video with one of your dollhouse friends. And keep your eyes peeled for part 9 of Bags, Boxes, and Luggage. And I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next episode of Little Gretchen's Workshop. Bye-bye now, dolls.